Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Growth Diary. My guest today co-founded Hearne House with her husband Nick in 2018, and they're a design-led construction company specialising in high-end residential renovations across London, from Grade 2 listing apartments in Bayswater to full house renovations in Islington and Clapham. So, Claudia Hearne, welcome to the Growth Diary. Great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, looking at the background where you started, you studied English language and applied linguistics at Northumbria University, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. He's done his research.
That's quite far away from construction. So, talk
Yes.
me through how you ended up going into construction from that.
Yeah, not really a natural sort of like career path, I would say. Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was at school, when I was finishing my sort of A levels. So I went to university. I thought, what am I really good at? Well, I could speak English pretty well. So I went to Northumbria to do a degree in that. I thought maybe I'd do something in the media or something in maybe journalism or something like that. So after I finished studying, I moved down to London and I worked in public relations. So I started out in fashion, and then I worked in food and beverage, and I did about 2 years of doing PR, which was very fun. I mean, not very well paid, but like great experience, and I had a great time. I come from a family of builders, so my fifth generation in our sort of family lineage of builders. My dad's a house builder, my mum's an interior designer. So and they always kind of did their own property developments in both in Yorkshire where I'm from, and then they did bits in London as well. So I'd always seen it from growing up, and as I grew up in that world. But then it was actually in 2013 that we actually had a family tragedy. And so I'm working in PR, all my family are doing property and construction. This family tragedy occurs, meaning I then have to kind of quit my job and go and support my family. So in that sense, it was sort of an accident. It wasn't really planned. But, I think when sort of really traumatic things happen, it quite often puts things in perspective. And suddenly my PR career was a bit irrelevant to my life. I just thought it's just not important right now. I need to be with my family and support them what they're doing. So I went to work for my parents, and I worked for them for 5 years. And that's where I learned to be a project manager. So I started, right at the bottom from, just kind of worked my way up. And then in 18, they were they'd been doing bits in London, but they were sort of ready to fully go back to Yorkshire and not live the London life anymore. And so they said, do you want to sort of take over the business and run it for us? While they sort of retire up north. But, I was always going to, because my parents always worked for themselves, they always had their own businesses. It was always my intention to, whatever career I had, I would always work for myself and I'd always have my own business. So they did offer that. But I thought, what, if I'm going to build something, I think I want to do it on my own. I think I want to do it under my own brand, have full ownership, and sort of not even, even though it's, working with family, which is great, there is an element of still sort of, working for someone or having to ask permission and that kind of thing. And I thought if I do it on my own, not my own, but if I do it, start something fresh that's brand new, then if and when it's not if, but when it's a huge success, I can sort of like fully own that and that's it. So actually at the time, my husband, he worked in the charity sector. He came to work with my parents for like a few months just to see if he wanted to leave the charity sector and, work and start something completely new. So, he was very supportive in the sense that even though he didn't know a lot about the industry and the sector, he knew that I did. And he sort of had that confidence that, together with, I guess, my knowledge and experience and his confidence that together we could build something. So yeah, that's when we set up Hearne House in September 2018.
So that was a full rebrand, was it? So
It
everything
wasn't.
new.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even a rebrand. It was a completely like the old company closed. That
Right.
that was them. This is us. So not even a rebrand. I was an employee, and then I started my own company. So completely separate of them. So yeah, which is nice.
Good on you for doing it. I mean, a lot of people would be frightened to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a lot of what they did was that I'd say one of the most beneficial things. I mean, obviously you grow up learning in an industry by osmosis if it's all your family does. But I think one of the major things that my parents really gave me was confidence. So, it was always a thing of, yeah, it can be scary. Yeah, you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. But if you don't do it, you'll never know. Just jump in and do it. Now, obviously, starting a new business as a couple, you can't rely on one person's salary. At the time we'd bought a flat, we had a mortgage, we had outgoings, and we had responsibilities. So there is that risk there. Obviously, if you're doing it together, there's no sort of fallback position. Um, in for a penny, in for a pound. I think, you know, people said to us, well, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if you don't make any money? Then how are you going to pay your mortgage? And we said, well, it's just not an option.
No,
It just will have to work because that's the only option.
burn the
Yeah,
boats, as they say.
exactly.
Yeah. Most construction companies, they usually hand the keys over and then let the buyers essentially do what they want after that. But you then take it the next step, don't you? Because you bring the design process into the whole kind of business model as well. So you're
Yeah,
kind of, building and then the interior design aspect.
yeah, that's it. I like to describe as a sort of like a design-led construction company. You know, uh, we're not interior designers. We are a main contractor, but we are passionate about good design. And it's something that I think they just really need to go hand in hand. What we've seen happen a lot is, a client will get a construction company, and then later down the line, or during the project, they'll then introduce an interior designer. And really, for a lot of interior aspects, they need to be considered way, way, way before, quite often a client will think about them, because it's all of the bones behind the building that feed into the final kind of design and how things are laid out. So it is really important to have those things considered early on. And so we will encourage, I mean, we do work with interior designers as well. So if our client, we have clients that have worked with interior designers for years, and they specifically want to use them. They love their design, they love their vision, and we love that. That's great. We've got really good relationships with lots of interior designers. Without blowing my own trumpet too much, they like working with us because we don't act like your average builder. We're very, very conscious of, how things should look. We're very conscious about finish, and we're sort of perfectionists. And also we tend to have this very collaborative relationship with interior designers where they might have a vision, but they're not always certain on how that is going to come to kind of reality.
Mm,
So they might make a proposal to us or to the client, and then we'll say, okay, like perhaps we could do it this way, and then that's going to be more functional or easier. It's going to save a huge amount of money, or there's various different things. So yeah, we've built these good relationships on having that kind of really collaborative relationship within a build team. And it's also really nice, we're always learning, we're always advancing. And I think when people have that really open-minded approach to a project, everybody benefits, especially the client. Sometimes people can get very, very protective over their domain. Like, well, I'm the designer, I'll do this. I'll prepare the plans and you just do what I say, which is fine. But I think you're really restricting yourself in that sense to other ideas and other growth. And I think building projects are never, completely linear. Things happen, or ideas come, or, it might be that I had a client who went on holiday to Istanbul during a project, and they said, oh, I saw this amazing thing and I want to try and replicate it in my home. So, and I thought, yeah, okay, well, it's not too late. Let's do it, because it wasn't at that point. It was quite early on. So, for me, I think homes really should be a reflection of who's living in them.
mm,
And I think the more open we can be to, adapting them to that specific person, and being open and being collaborative and not being rigid, I think is
mm.
really, really important. Now, not all builders love it because, we don't like changes, but that's again why it's really important to get those designs in early doors so that we can avoid changes during the build process. But yeah, I think we enjoy doing design in-house. We do a lot of bespoke kitchens, bespoke cabinetry, bespoke just furniture in general, lots of kind of vanity units, wardrobes, that kind of thing. But yeah, we love it. And because we've done so many and we've worked with so many amazing suppliers, and we go to all the shows, whether they're in London or Milan or Paris, or, we're always scouting for new products, new ideas, new materials. And so we can sort of bring that together with, for the client, and present them with, something that you don't get on, you on the high street, I guess.
Absolutely. And a lot of your clients are not just looking for a property that they're just going to flip, they're looking for their forever home. And then some people don't have imaginations at all, and perhaps they don't have an interior designer that they've been working with. So that's where you come in as well, to bridge the gap between their kind of some ideas that they have floating around and something that's actually that can be put into a tangible, real finished product.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We get a real mix. We get some clients who come and they say, I haven't got a clue what I want. In fact, I've had clients before who have seen our previous projects and they said, I want that. And we said, okay, well, should we adapt it slightly to make it a little bit more unique to know? And they said, no, I want the exact same thing replicated. Okay, well, we're quite happy to do that. It's very, very easy for us. But usually clients will come and they say, I've maybe seen this picture on Pinterest, or my friend's got a bathroom, or I stayed in this hotel and I saw this. And, is there any chance we can do this? And we love having those conversations because we'll usually refer back to something similar we've done before. But even if we haven't, we love kind of pushing ourselves and pushing the boundaries. The answer is always yes. Is it possible to do this? Yes, it's possible. Everything's possible. It's just depending on how much time and how much money you want to invest in that particular vision. But we're very much yes people, and we love sort of coming up with new creative ways to achieve something that's unique or something that's really interesting. So when a client doesn't know, that sometimes can be really fun for us because we can sort of be quite creative and take them some ideas that we know they're going to love. And equally, sometimes we have clients that come to us and they say, I've got a very specific vision. This is exactly what I want. Or, they come to us and they say, we've been working with this interior designer and this is their vision. And this is, in which case that makes it sort of like a paint by numbers for us. So we're equally happy with that approach too. The main thing is, it's having a client that kind of respects the process. And if anything, I could ask for a client, it's just that they I guess really it's their decision. And so as long as the client is clear with us of what they want, even if that is, I don't know what I want, so I'm going to hand over to you, that's okay
Yeah.
too. So, we're very fluid and we're very adaptable depending on what our client needs. Ultimately, their needs are paramount. So, whatever way we can get there, we're happy to do that.
And you work exclusively through personal recommendation, so no real advertising per se, no lead generation. For a business that operates on projects that last 6 months, 2 years, that's where client relationships really are so important. So how do you keep the pipeline full, and what does it look like from taking on that first client to having a result where they then want to refer you to their friends and family?
Yeah, I mean, we're very, very fortunate that basically since we started, we have just gone on word of mouth. I think I would say that's mostly because we're fantastic and our clients love us. But also we are good to work with. We're reliable and we produce an excellent product. And I think there is a bit of a short supply of reliable, easy to work with contractors in London. Or not that there's a shortage, but I think there's a lot that don't fit that brief. And so I think when a client, successfully completes a project with a contractor and they love them, really they make it that, I mean, they do our advertising for us because they shout your names from the rooftops. And we've been so lucky. We've had so many lovely clients, and that's really what they do. Because also it's a very personal process renovating a house, because we're dealing mainly with homeowners who are end users. Like, they're going to live in that house for the most part, whether that's their London pied a terre or whether it's their main home. Normally most of our projects are actually for the end users, we call them. And so naturally, because of that, because it's their home, it ends up being a very, very personal process. because you're talking about how they're going to live in that space. How, they've usually, apart from the property itself, it's the renovation is the next most expensive thing they've ever, spent their money on. So it's a really big investment in time, money, emotion. And so, quite early on in the process, we tend to forge quite good relationships, quite strong relationships where, because we have to be kind of in constant communication. Yeah, I think because of that close relationship and because we're so specific and so kind of hot on client satisfaction, and making sure that they're happy with the end product, I think, we then end up with very happy clients, and they, they make it sort of their mission to shout us from the rooftops, which is, that's also why we focus so much on having a happy client, because if you don't have that, then, what's next? I guess there is other ways that people get business, but this way is free. And it's also quite reliable, because in the same way that they refer us to their friends and family because they like working with us and, we did a good job for them, they also are referring us their friends and family. And so who are usually the same kind of, the same type of people. So if we had a really lovely client and they introduce us to their family member or their friend, they're usually really lovely as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of works both ways. We're like, well, if you're a friend or relation of this person, then we would be delighted to work with you on this project. And honestly, that is true. So we're very fortunate. We've just, yeah. So in terms of pipeline, because we're a small business, we don't take on a huge amount of projects. We can be running 2, 3, 4 projects at a time, depending on the size. Actually, as the business has grown, that number sort of has got smaller. So, I think probably our maximum, we've probably done 5 at one time. Now we'll not really take any more than 3. Again, it depends on the size. If they were smaller ones, then we could. But we're very conscious. We just need to keep that level of service there. And I think if you stretch yourself too far, then that service level has the potential to drop. Yeah, I think it can be a bit, I get these emails from lead generators saying, we can generate you 10 to 15 leads a week. And I'm thinking, well, I'm sure you could, but are they good quality leads? Are they good people? Where is the project? Our geographical area, same as the number of projects, the area that we operate in has actually got smaller as the business has grown, because we've just realized to keep that really high level of service, we need to physically be within reach. So our rule is sort of that we need to be within a half an hour drive from our office. Now, we do both we use scooters, so like, mopeds. We can get around quite quickly, but I think anything further than that, and, we just think that if anything happens, or if you just need to nip in and see something, I think being physically close, when you're on the actual construction side, on the design side, not so much, but when you're actually in the construction side, you do need to physically be there regularly, just to, quality control, checking everything that is as it should be. Yeah, that's sort of like, I guess we've got more picky as time's gone on, but that's helped us. That's helped away. So still working fully on word of mouth, and it's going well so far. But
It speaks volumes that you'll continue business like that, and it just shows how good you are at what you do. And when was it when you saw that things were going in the opposite directions, as in project numbers were going down and revenue was going up? Because you've been trying to sort of actively that model.
yeah, do you know what? I think it was very much a natural progression. It's not something that we sat down one day and decided we're going to take on less projects and we're going to have, better quality or higher value projects. It's sort of a natural progression. I think when you first start out, and when we first started out, we were at a kitchen table with 2 laptops and 2 phones, and that was it. So we had no investment. We didn't have anything. And so in that first few months, you want the work, you want any work. So we were saying yes to kind of everything we could get. Now, people, because I'd been in the industry for quite a few years, people did know me, and I'd kept in touch with various people at that early stage. I sort of did a lot of networking and, kind of speaking to architects, engineers, interior designers, but also just like other people that are doing what we do. So, essentially our competitors. And actually what I found is that people are so so supportive. Even when you're sort of peers, now I see lots of people that are doing similar things to it. As in, I know other business owners that I'll go to events with and have lunch with, and it's, even though technically we're in competition, we're not really. There's enough space for everyone. It's a really nice, supportive industry, I would say, and so yeah, at the start, it was sort of grappling for all the work we could get. And then as our reputation grew and we got more referrals and we became a lot more stable and, financially we were in a less precarious position, that meant that we could just then be a little bit more fussy about what we were taking. And so that's when I sort of like our geographical area sort of got less.
Mm.
And then in terms of project value, we were just kind of, I guess, I think with any business, I think you can start. I mean, I'm sure lots of people start businesses where they know exactly what it's going to be on day one, and then they continue that vision. But I
Mm.
reckon for the most part, for most businesses, people have an idea of what they want to do, and then you
Mm.
get, I think the main thing is to get moving. Don't wait for it to be perfect, but get moving. And then you will naturally find your path. You
Mm.
will do bits and you'll say, oh, do you know what? That didn't really work. Or um, we weren't originally going to do that, but we have done, and we found it to be really enjoyable or really profitable, or it led to this. So I think being adaptable, being open-minded, and not being afraid to go off the path, from what you originally thought.
Mm.
I think you naturally sort of find your groove and find where you are as a person in that particular industry. Like, where do I fit in? Um, I don't think I was ever going to be a volume builder, um, because I just don't think that. I think I'm, a perfectionist. I really like that personal side of it, and
Mm.
the fact that I think really getting invested in a particular project. And I don't know, but yeah, personality wise, I guess comes into it. But yeah, just sort of going with the flow, I guess.
That's really true. I mean, it reminds me of a story I know of a YouTuber, and he started a channel. It was called Think Media. It was at the very beginning. He just did some kind of videos with his local church or something like that. Anyway, the vicar, believe it or not, screwed him over, didn't pay him for all the work. Then he thought, right, screw it, I'm just going to go off and do something else. But he just kept going and just found his
Yeah,
pathway. Then
yeah, good.
he started doing videos on technology, and all of a sudden it started blowing up. And that was
There
his
you go.
pathway, but he didn't stop. He just kept going with it. And now he's got millions of subscribers. They're turning over millions and millions a year,
Wow.
multiple revenue streams. And it's incredible what they've created.
I
Yeah,
hope that vicar now regrets what he did, because I
absolutely.
mean, yeah, how ridiculous as well. Man of the
I
cloth.
know.
He should know. He should.
Precisely. That's what I thought when I heard the story. But yeah, you're a real vocal advocate for women in male-dominated industries, and construction is about as male-dominated as it gets, really, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
what's your day-to-day experience in working in that kind of environment been like for you? What would you say to any woman who's out there considering getting involved in that space?
Yeah, I would say absolutely go for it. Really, we have to be the ones to make the change. So, I would say don't be off put by it. It's is hardcore. It's male. It's so heavily male dominated. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I think it's something like 98% male.
Wow.
So, and I think a lot of the women, I bet someone's going to watch this and fact check me and get the real stat. But whatever it is, it's an overwhelming majority. And I think the women that are in construction, a lot of them are in um, a lot of them are in the office side of things. Um, I would say absolutely go for it. I absolutely love working in male dominated industry. I don't think it's held me back. I mean, there's definitely been times where I thought, I bet that wouldn't have happened if I was a guy. I've been in meetings before. I was in a meeting with a client actually who's so lovely, but he is about 150 years old and he's very old school. And we were in this meeting and it was early on in the project, but it was a huge project. It was like it was a big building in the middle of Paddington, and it was 5 flats, including a duplex basement flat that we had to dig out. So not an insignificant project, but we're there on like an early design meeting. And I don't think even though I'd introduced myself, I don't think he had actually registered that it was like it was my company because there were other men in my team. And
Okay.
so as we sat down, he said, "Dear, are you going to go and make us all a cup of tea?"
No way.
And I said, "No, actually, I'm not, but Nick will." Who was obviously happy to oblige because actually, I think, I don't really care. I don't begrudge him. I mean, I think with somebody that's of that generation, I think I'm not going to change their mind. There's no point me sitting here, you know, annoyed or lecturing him on how he's a misogynist or whatever,
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
he's from a different age.
Yeah.
But I think you do have to have thick skin. You've got
Mm.
to put on your big boots, not be sensitive. I mean, I'm not sensitive at all, and I think it is over years working in the industry. Um, that I think, you do develop a thick skin, which is important. I think if you're a very, very sensitive person,
Mm.
then it might not be for you. Now, that's not to say that, you have to accept mistreatment, because you absolutely don't. When I say thick skin, I mean, there is ribbing and there's banter and there's, I think that will always be the case. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Mm.
It can be fun, and I think all of the guys on my team, I get on really well with all of them. Um, they respect me, I respect them, and they'll have a little joke, but it's never done with malice. It's never
Mm.
done in a bad way, and ultimately the respect is there, which is the main thing.
Mm.
They will sort of, like, when I come to site, they might make a joke about the fact the teacher's here, and all sit up straight, it's that kind of thing. But it's fine. It's gentle and it's ribbing, and I think actually, you have to be the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
There's barely any women tradeswomen, like women actually on the tools.
Mm.
Now, I think that is there's multiple reasons why. I think, firstly, it's because it's a male dominated industry, women don't see it as an option, or it's not something that is very appealing to them. I think there's also physical attributes to a lot of site work that lends itself better typically to men, because a lot of the time men are physically bigger and stronger than women. That's just a very sweeping statement, because obviously you get really strong women and you get really weak men.
Mm.
But me personally, I'm sure. I mean, I go to the gym, I lift weights and things like that. But there is no way you'd get me at 8 in the morning on a freezing cold morning when it's pissing it down, carrying in bits of timber from a lorry into a site. I'm just not interested in it. I don't want to do it. There's plenty of women that would happily do that, and I think they should have the opportunity
Yeah.
to this exactly every opportunity that any man should have. But yeah, I think the industry in general has not been particularly welcoming to women. But I think there's various things that the industry, so companies, can do to sort of make that pathway easier, making the building world a more accommodating place
Mm.
for women. So I think it's a mix of both. It does need to be made more accommodating, but I think women that are interested in going into property construction, that sort of thing, all the women that I know that work in this industry are strong, ballsy women that can take the piss out of themselves. And I actually think that's why they are thriving in this industry,
Yeah.
because they know that. And actually, some of the most successful people I know that are working in construction and property are women. So yeah, I think not taking yourself too seriously, but you can be serious about your work, but then, also,
Yeah.
taking a sort of, I don't know, sort of a relaxed, lighthearted view to the industry, and yeah, be the change that you want to see.
Yeah. So I think the Brits are known for their banter, and it's understanding where the banter stops and then it becomes rudeness. Sometimes there's a bit of a grey area there.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. I think there is a line. I mean, it's very easy to say, just know the line, but obviously
Mm.
everyone's got a different line.
Mm.
But
Mm.
really, like, read the room. If
Yeah.
you're ribbing someone and they're not laughing or they're not doing it back, that's not banter. That's just
No.
bullying.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, if someone is having a fun time with you, then that's okay. But if
Yeah.
they're not giving it back or then don't look like they're enjoying it, just cut it, move on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, precisely. Looking at how you visualize your projects, walk me through how you bring a design to life before even a single wall goes up. Do you use technology in that process?
Yeah, we do. So we use online CAD software
Hmm.
to kind of make visual, like we make renders, we do lots of drawing layouts, so we do elevations, we do sort of like different types of drawings, but elevations are
Mm-hmm.
very sort of mathematical, and that's just make sure that everything is exactly how it should be. So for example, I don't know, you have a wall that you've got paneling on. When you've got your elevations, you know that your electrical socket has to be exactly there, so it doesn't cut halfway between a I don't know, dado rail or something. But yeah, so we do lots of different, we do very precise drawings like that, and then we do sort of, um, your very typical site drawing, but then we'll also do renders. So we can do sort of like walkthroughs with clients of rooms and spaces. We find this really helpful. The client loves it because they get to see what the product they're getting is going to look like. But they're also physically very helpful because you can almost imagine yourself more in that room and be like, right, which way does this cupboard door open? It opens that way. Okay, so now we need this amount of gap here. Is that going to clash with anything? Or, is there enough walkway here, there, and everywhere? So I think by doing those renders, you do get a bit more of a real life feel than you do necessarily with just overhead plans. But we've sort of sometimes, so we'll always do our own original drawings, and then yeah, we will create renders for clients. And also the other thing with doing renders is you can play around with light. So when you've got your windows and your lighting in, you can actually adjust the time of day on your render, so you can see, okay, this is what the lighting's going to look like in the daytime, in the morning, at lunchtime, in the evening, and then at nighttime when it's dark. So it's really helpful for doing very specific planning of your furniture layouts, your lighting layouts, where your TV is going to go, and things like that.
When we previously spoke about like, utilizing AI, now that's becoming a big part of businesses in every aspect, in every industry. So, how are you thinking about that on the creative side and equally in the back end processes? If you could use
Yeah,
technology to solve one problem, what would it be, do you think?
solve one problem. Make everybody do exactly what they're meant to be doing all the time. It's really interesting that you talk about AI because we're actually in a field that I think is one of the safer industries. We're not completely, I think with anything physical, you need a human being there.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's not too much of a concern. I think on the design element, I've sort of in two minds about this because I've been really frustrated where I've seen our competitors sort of just pushing out AI images of finished properties that they are claiming as their own work. And because they're AI and they can be generated in seconds, the supposed stream of imagery is coming in thick and fast. We only ever publish photos of work that we've done.
Hmm.
And obviously our projects take, anywhere from between 6 to 24 months. So bear in mind, you're only getting a fresh batch of really gorgeous visuals within
Hmm.
that time frame. So we're not pumping out loads of new imagery all the time. So seeing competitors do it and then not declare it as AI can be really
Hmm.
frustrating because you think, well,
Hmm.
it's not real. But, I know that not everybody knows it's not real. So it feels like, there's that temptation to join in, which we definitely won't be doing because I think, again, a lot of our success is down to our integrity. But that being said, I have to say, when it comes to, the early stages of design, when I've sort of done a room layout, what would, what I can do, say I've got the render, but it's very basic. And then I can put that render into an AI program and say, make a photorealistic version of this. And it
Hmm.
might not be perfect. So it's not going to be something to design from. But the time it takes me to do that to show a client, this is what I have in mind. Do you
Hmm.
like the look of this? Is there anything, having that really kind of broad discussion of like maybe furniture placement or where things are actually going to sit, how they're going to look. This is my idea. This is kind of just what's in my head. What do you think with that? I can do that in, half an hour or less versus maybe 3 weeks. So in that sense, I think we can come up with things for the client very quickly. We will, when it comes to actually building it, we will always do our own drawings. We won't rely on on AI, because I also don't think it's quite there yet. Not,
Mm.
with what we do, with what we're building, everything's so precise to the
Yes.
nearest millimeter. So I think, I'm sure in terms of design, it will continue to develop and get better and better. But I think it can be a useful tool to
Mm.
aid in whatever you're doing. We use it in terms of office work. We use it all the time. I mainly use it for asking it how to, um, do techie things. I'm struggling to do this in Excel. Or like before this call, I was trying to set up my microphone and I was having a half an hour conversation with ChatGPT about how to reset my mic.
Okay.
Unsuccessful, hence the AirPods. I've seen people try and sort of reject AI and say we need to protect ourselves and we're going
Mm.
to be brain dead, or we're not going to, know how to do anything because we're all going to rely on AI. But I think resistance is futile. It is here and it's changing the world. It's already changed the world in such a big way.
Mm.
I think it's about trying to use it and harness it in a way that can just advance your own skills and your own creativity.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that AI isn't is human. It's not
Mm.
creative. It's not interesting. It's just regurgitating everything that is on the internet.
Mm.
So that's okay. It's an amazing tool, but I think, not, it's either you would kind of get on board or you'll get left behind. So
Mm.
we're still figuring out the processes that we can use that can use AI to assist with what we're doing. But I think, there's almost every process in some way could probably be helped by using it. It's just defining what that is, and not relying
Yeah.
on it too heavily.
Percent. And I watched a video. I think it was a university. They did a study where they tested 3 students and they gave them the same project. And they said, right, you can go off and you can not use ChatGPT or any AI whatsoever to do your paper, your project. And there was a person that could just use Google, and there was a person that could just use AI. And then they measured the brain activity throughout that whole project for each person. And it was
Interesting.
something like 90% of the brain wasn't being used compared to the
Wow.
person that was
Yeah.
just using, their own methods
Yeah.
to research,
Wow.
like the old school methods
Yeah.
pre-internet.
I mean, it makes sense. I can believe it
Mm.
because I mean, I've definitely had, not really to do with work, but I had an issue with my credit card and I was kind of conversing over email with a customer service from American Express. And on the entire conversation was basically ChatGPT because I was just copying and pasting it and being like, right, right to reply to this, saying this, and then
Mm.
bouncing between. And I mean, I'm sat there and it clicks. It's a few clicks. I don't have to do anything. You can even dictate into it and say, this is what I want. It can make you very lazy, but it also, I mean, overall saves you a lot of time. So yeah, I do think we need to be careful that we don't sort of like, especially with the younger people, that they're not losing that sort of critical thinking
Mm.
and reasoning. You do need to keep your brain functioning and thinking and interesting and being super critical, even of everything that you see on ChatGPT, not just copying and pasting. Um,
Mm. Sense
it
check everything.
sense check everything. It's not always right. But it can be an amazing assistant, I would say.
100%. Yeah, yeah. Alongside running Hearne House, you built quite the profile as a TV personality as well. So how did that all come about? What's that done for your business?
Yeah, so it's funny actually. Earlier, you were talking about banter because I did go on Good Morning Britain to debate banter in the workplace.
Right.
And yeah, it was a debate they were doing about. I think someone had said that banter should be banned in the workplace,
Mm.
and so I went on to argue the case for not banning banter because I think it's a really important part of, we spend what 8 hours a day at least at work or with our
Mm.
colleagues. I think having that fun, relaxed environment and chat is a way to get through the day. But sorry, it was another debate. It was another Good Morning Britain segment. They basically called my office and it was a debate slot and they wanted to speak to a woman that works in construction. And that being there's not that many of us, luckily I was the one that they called. And yeah, so I went on and it was just meant to be a one-time thing. But I went on and absolutely loved it. It was only about a 10-minute segment, but I really enjoyed it. And they liked me because they invited me back. Uh, then yeah, I then got interest from other programs. Now I'm regularly on sort of Channel 5. I do a lot of live. It's all live TV, but it's kind of like a talking head. So discussing current affairs, business, politics, whatever that might be. It's the news of the day, basically. Sometimes it's sometimes it's shorter segments. Sometimes it's like 2.5 hour long show. But it's always debating, and it's always live, and it's always interesting, I think. So it started out. I started talking about construction, and now because I guess my role really in that is as a business person. And I think in a way, everything that's going on feeds into everything else. You know, current affairs feeds into politics, feeds into business. So it sort of started accidentally, and now it's just my another hat that I wear, not a hard hat, but my TV hat. But yeah, I really enjoy it because we don't have a huge amount of clients. They're very niche. It hasn't necessarily had a direct impact on sort of new clients.
Mm,
But I guess it's personal brand building, reputation, kudos, things like that. So
yeah.
I think, it's more of a personal branding and
Mm,
an awareness thing. I think maybe more people look us up because they've sort of seen me talking about something in particular. You know, there's certain topics that I talk about a lot,
mm,
that I'm really passionate about. So, some reoccurring themes. But yeah, I mean, I'm a really open-minded person, and I'm a bit of a yes man.
mm.
So, I get myself into some really bizarre situations, and my friends and my family go, "How on earth did you end up doing that?" And I said, "I just said yes." But, I think quite often, if you're an entrepreneurial person, if you're that mindset, they
Mm,
kind of go hand in hand.
yeah.
I think to really, to have that, I think it's quite a business person's attitude to say yes, be open, and actually, I found that when I was, as I was kind of developing my career when I was a bit younger, people were really open and really generous with their time about giving advice, saying yes to going to a coffee, going to meetings with people, even when it was of no benefit to them, when it was just them giving advice or having some time. So I really, really appreciated that growing up. And again, that was something my parents instilled in me. They would say, who do you admire? Who do you want to be like in business? And I'd say something. They'd say, well, write to them. Go and ask them if they'll go for a coffee with you. And I was like, well, what if they say no? Well, they might do. And then you'll be no worse off. So what, but actually, a lot of the time they will say yes. People love giving advice, but also people are generally speaking, they want other people to do well.
Yeah.
And so I now definitely have the same thing. I definitely pay it back. I've had lots of people who are, in my industry or entering my industry or more junior to me or, want to be doing
Mm,
what I'm doing, say, "Oh, can we go for a coffee? Or can I come and see you and we have a chat about this? Or can I come and have a look around one of your building sites?" Yeah,
mm,
of course you can. That's how you
mm.
learn. That's how you get ideas. That's how you develop yourself. So,
Totally
it's,
agree.
yeah, I think it's really important to, for us all to be lifting each other up for sure.
100%. It's more so now than ever, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Claudia, this has been a great chat. I mean, what you've done, building a premium construction business from the ground up in London through personal recommendations alone is genuinely impressive. So thanks so much for being on.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.